The first thing Gideon Mercer saw was not blood, it was shame. A young woman lay twisted on the sunburned grass near the Smoky Hill River. Her wrists were bound tight behind her back. Her ankles were pulled together with rough rope. Her torn white dress clung to her skin like it had given up trying to protect her. The Kansas heat pressed down on everything. The wind lifted the fabric of her dress just enough to steal what little dignity she had left. Gideon froze where he stood. 48 years on the plains had shown him death. He had seen hunger that hollowed men out like empty barrels. He had watched cowboys torn apart by cattle stampedes and gunfights gone wrong. He had buried friends in shallow graves and said prayers over strangers who died alone on the trail. But this was different. This was a woman left alive on purpose, posed like a warning, abandoned in broad daylight where anyone could see her. Someone wanted her found exactly like this. She saw him then. Her eyes went wide with terror. Then they squeezed shut like the world itself had become too much to bear. Her voice came out broken and uneven. "Do not look, please. Do not look there." The words were weak, embarrassed, pleading. Not a cry for help, just a desperate plea for mercy. Gideon felt his chest lock up tight. He did not know where to look, so he looked nowhere at all. He stared at the horizon, his jaw clenched hard. His hands shook like he was a boy caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. The woman shifted slightly on the ground. The ropes bit into her skin, and the movement made her gasp in pain. It was clear now that she had been stripped of more than her belongings. Whatever modest clothing she once wore underneath had been taken. She was exposed in a way no decent person would ever choose. Gideon pulled the wool blanket from his saddle. He tossed it toward her without looking back. "Do not move." His voice cracked despite himself. "Just stay still." The blanket landed over her legs. She let out a breath that sounded like relief mixed with sobbing. Dust clung to her cheeks. Tears cut pale lines through the dirt on her face. She tried to curl inward to cover herself, but the rope stopped her short. The silence between them was heavy. Only the sound of grasshoppers and the distant stamp of Gideon's horse filled the hot summer air. This was no accident. No storm had done this to her. No wild animal. Someone had taken their time. Someone had meant for her to be found exactly like this. The question burned in Gideon's mind. If she was left here alive, ashamed, terrified, then what kind of man was supposed to find her? And what was supposed to happen next? He had been riding fence lines all morning, checking for breaks in the wire, looking for strays that might have wandered off during the night. His ranch spread across 3,000 acres of Kansas prairie. Good land, hard land. The kind of land that tested men and broke the ones who were not strong enough. Gideon had built the Mercer Ranch with his own two hands. He had been 23 years old when he drove his first herd across the territory. Back then, his hair was dark as coal, and his back never ached in the morning. Now his hair had gone silver at the temples. His knees complained when he climbed down from the saddle, but his eyes were still sharp. His hands were still steady, and his heart still knew right from wrong. Finding this woman changed everything. As Gideon finally knelt down to cut the ropes at her ankles, his mind was already working through the possibilities. Who would do something like this? And why? The woman's voice trembled again. "Please do not look. I cannot bear it." Gideon nodded even though she could not see it. He kept his eyes fixed on the far hills. His knife slid from its sheath with a soft whisper of leather. "Ma'am, I am going to cut these ropes. I will not look." "You have my word on that." She swallowed hard under the blanket. Her breathing was ragged, uneven, like someone trying not to fall apart completely. "I did not mean for anyone to see me like this." Then she let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, but it was a laugh that hurt. "Guess that ship sailed a long time ago." She was trying to joke, trying to hold herself together with humor because it was the only thing she had left. Gideon understood that. He had done the same thing plenty of times in his life. When the world got too heavy, when the pain got too deep, sometimes a bad joke was the only rope you had to hold on to. He reached behind him and grabbed his canteen, still facing away, still careful. He held it out like a man offering peace. "Take a small sip. Do not choke." Her hand trembled as it found the canteen. She drank, then coughed, then gave a tiny angry sigh. Warm as bathwater. Gideon almost smiled. Welcome to Kansas. It does that every summer. That little bit of normal talk did something important. It made her feel human again, not just a poor, broken thing left on the grass. Her breathing slowed, her shoulders dropped a fraction. The blanket stayed tight around her like it was the last good thing in the world. I am Mabel. Her voice was steadier now. Most folks call me May. Gideon nodded. Gideon. Friends call me Gid. You can call me whatever gets you through the next 5 minutes. She almost laughed again, then winced. The ropes had dug deep into her wrists. The skin looked raw and swollen. Angry red marks circled her arms like bracelets made of pain. Gideon felt that old familiar anger rise up inside him. The kind that starts in your gut and climbs to your throat. The kind that makes your hands want to curl into fists. Somebody did this on purpose. Somebody tied those knots like they had plenty of time, like they enjoyed every second of it. And now Gideon was going to find out who. But first he had to get this woman somewhere safe, somewhere out of the sun, somewhere she could breathe without fear. He had no idea that his whole life was about to change, that this woman would lead him straight into a betrayal he never saw coming, that before the week was over, he would lose everything he thought he knew about loyalty and friendship. But right now, in this moment, all that mattered was cutting those ropes. So let me ask you something before we go any further. If you found someone like this, hurt, ashamed, left behind like they were nothing, would you stop to help them, or would you ride on by and pretend you never saw a thing? Think about that while we continue with the story. May spoke like every word cost her something precious. They took my bag, my shoes, and what little modesty I had left, just to be cruel. Gideon's jaw tightened. He still did not look at her directly. He reached back and found a second strip of cloth from his saddle roll. He slid it toward her across the grass. Wrap that around your shoulders. There is no honor in the wind, getting a better view than it deserves. May pulled the cloth around herself. For a second, she sounded almost like a regular young woman. Someone you might meet at a church social or a town dance. If you tell anyone you saw me like this, she said, I will haunt your barn. I will rattle every bucket you own until you go mad. Gideon huffed softly. Ma'am, if you can haunt, then you do not need my help. But I would appreciate you haunting the men who did this first. She went quiet again. The joke had run its course. Reality was settling back in like dust after a storm. Then she whispered something that made Gideon's blood run cold. I was headed for Abine, the depot there. I work the desk sometimes. They said I heard something I should not have. Gideon's eyes narrowed at that. Abine was not just cattle and whiskey. It was gossip, money, and men who smiled while they stole. The kind of town where secrets changed hands like poker chips, where the wrong word in the wrong ear could get you killed, or worse. He shifted his weight and finally lowered himself to one knee, still looking away, still careful. All right, May, I am going to finish cutting these ropes. Then we get you out of this sun, and then you are going to tell me everything you heard at that depot. May nodded slowly. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was stronger now. Okay, Gideon worked the knife against the rope at her ankles. The fibers were thick, coarse. The kind of rope you use for tying down cargo, not the kind you find lying around by accident. Someone had planned this. As the last strand gave way, May pulled her legs in close. She wrapped the blanket tighter and let out a shaky breath. Thank you. Not loud, not dramatic, just real. Gideon stood and dusted off his knees. Can you walk? May tried to stand. Her legs wobbled like a newborn calf. She grabbed at the grass and nearly fell. Gideon caught her arm without thinking. His hand was rough from decades of ranch work, calloused and strong, but his grip was gentle. Easy now. Take your time. We have got all day. May looked up at him then, really looked at him for the first time. She saw a man with silver at his temples and sun-weathered skin, a man with kind eyes and a jaw set hard against the cruelty of the world. Why are you helping me? She asked. You do not even know me. Gideon considered the question. He could have said a lot of things. He could have talked about duty, or honor, or the code of the West. But instead he just shrugged, because somebody should. And I happened to be standing here. May stared at him for a long moment. Then something shifted in her eyes. The fear was still there. The shame was still there. But now there was something else too. Hope. Maybe just a tiny spark of it. But it was there. Gideon helped her walk toward his horse. A big chestnut gelding named Copper. The horse was calm and steady, 20 years old and wise enough to know when something was wrong. Copper snorted softly as they approached. His ears swiveled forward. He studied May like he was trying to figure out if she was friend or trouble. "This is Copper," Gideon said. "He does not bite much." May reached out a trembling hand and touched the horse's nose. Copper leaned into her palm like he understood. "He is beautiful," Gideon nodded. "He is also stubborn as a mule and twice as ornery, but he has never let me down when it mattered." He helped May climb up into the saddle. She was still wrapped in the blanket, still pale, still shaking, but she held on tight and did not complain. Gideon took the reins and started walking, leading Copper along the riverbank, away from the spot where May had been left like discarded trash. "Where are we going?" May asked. "My place is about 3 miles from here. You can rest, get some real clothes, and then we figure out what to do next." May was quiet for a while. Then she spoke again. "Gideon, yeah, there is something else you need to know." Gideon kept walking. His boots crunched on the dry grass. The sun beat down on his shoulders like a heavy hand. "What is it?" May's voice dropped low, almost a whisper. "The men who did this to me. They were not strangers. They were not drifters or outlaws from somewhere else." Gideon felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "What do you mean?" May swallowed hard. "I saw one of them before. Not today, not out on the prairie." Her next words hit him like a punch to the gut. "I saw him at your ranch, wearing your brand." Gideon stopped walking. His heart was pounding. His mind was racing. One of his own men, someone who worked for him, someone he trusted. May continued in that same trembling whisper. "He was giving the orders, telling the others what to do. And he kept saying your name, kept saying you were in the way, that you were too stubborn to sell." Gideon stood there in the hot Kansas sun, his whole world tilting sideways. One of his own men had done this, had hurt this woman, had left her like bait in a trap, and the trap was meant for him. "Are you sure?" His voice came out rough, strained. May nodded. "I am sure. I will never forget his face." Gideon felt the anger rising again. But this time it was different. This time it was mixed with something else. Betrayal. The worst kind of pain there is. He started walking again, faster now, his jaw set hard. "Then I reckon we have got some talking to do. And after that, we have got some justice to find." May held on tight to Copper's mane. She had no idea that she had just started a war, and neither did Gideon. They had not gone more than 100 yards when the first shot cracked through the air. Gideon heard it before he felt it, a sharp snap like a dry branch breaking. Then the dirt beside his boot exploded in a spray of dust and pebbles. Someone was shooting at them. "Get down!" Gideon yanked Copper's reins hard. The horse reared up with a startled whinny. May grabbed the saddle horn and held on for dear life. A second shot rang out, this one closer. The bullet whizzed past Gideon's ear with a sound like an angry wasp. He did not waste time trying to see where the shooter was. He just reacted, grabbed May around the waist, pulled her off the horse. They hit the ground together in a tangle of blankets and dust. "Stay low," Gideon hissed. "Low as you can get." May pressed herself flat against the earth. Her face was white with fear. Her whole body was trembling. "I thought it was over," she whispered. "I thought we were safe." Gideon shook his head grimly. "Not yet, not by a long shot." He peered over the top of a small rise, squinted against the bright sun. Somewhere up on the ridge, maybe 200 yards away, he could see a thin wisp of smoke, the kind that comes from a rifle barrel after it fires. Someone was up there, watching, waiting. A third shot kicked up dirt a few feet to their left. The shooter was finding their range, getting closer with every bullet. Gideon grabbed Copper's reins again. The horse was dancing nervously, wanting to run. "Listen to me," Gideon said quickly. "I am going to send Copper home. When he gets there alone, my men will know something is wrong. They will come looking." May stared at him. "You are sending away our only way out of here." Gideon nodded. "That horse can outrun any bullet. We cannot. If we try to ride out of here in the open, they will pick us off like tin cans on a fence post." He did not wait for her to argue. He gave Copper a hard slap on the hindquarters. "Go home, boy. Go!" Copper bolted. His hooves thundered against the hard-packed earth. He ran like his tail was on fire, heading east toward the Mercer Ranch. The shooter fired twice more, but Copper was moving too fast, zigging and zagging like he knew exactly what he was doing. Within seconds, the horse was just a brown speck in the distance. Gideon grabbed May's hand. "Now we move. Stay low. Follow me." They crawled through the tall grim, inch by inch, the sun beating down on their backs, the dry stalks scratching at their skin. Gideon led them toward the creek bed. It was lower ground, messy and muddy, but it would give them cover. Behind them, he could hear boots crunching on gravel. The shooter was coming down from the ridge, not in a hurry, taking his time. That worried Gideon more than the bullets had. A man in a hurry makes mistakes. A man taking his time means he thinks he has already won. They slid down the creek bank and splashed into the shallow water. It was cool against their skin, almost refreshing after the brutal heat. "Keep moving," Gideon whispered. "Do not stop." May nodded. Her jaw was set. Her eyes were focused. Whatever fear she had was locked down tight. She was not going to fall apart now. Gideon felt a flash of admiration for her. This woman had been through hell, left broken and ashamed in the middle of nowhere. And here she was, still fighting, still moving forward. That took guts. They followed the creek for what felt like forever. The water soaked through their boots. Mud sucked at their feet. Insects buzzed around their heads. But they kept moving. Finally, Gideon spotted something up ahead. A small wooden structure half hidden in a stand of cottonwood trees. His line shack. It was not much. 4 walls made of rough-cut timber. A crooked door that barely hung on its hinges. A roof that leaked when it rained. But right now it looked like a palace. "In there," Gideon said. "Quick!" They scrambled up the bank and ran for the shack. Gideon threw open the door and pushed May inside. Then he followed and slammed the door shut behind them. He grabbed a heavy wooden bar and dropped it into the brackets on either side of the door. It would not stop a determined man forever, but it would slow him down. The inside of the shack was dim and musty. It smelled like old hay and sweat. A single window let in a shaft of dusty sunlight. Gideon pressed his back against the wall and tried to catch his breath. May stood in the middle of the room, still wrapped in that blanket, still looking like she had been through a war, because she had. "What is this place?" she asked. "Line shack," Gideon said. "I use it when I am working the far pastures. Stock some supplies here. Food, water, a couple blankets." He crossed to a wooden chest in the corner and pulled out a clean shirt. It was one of his own, way too big for her, but it was better than what she had. "Put this on," he said. "And there is pants in there too. Probably fall right off you, but we can tie them up." He turned his back while she changed, kept his eyes on the window, watching for movement outside. "There is someone coming," May said quietly. "I can hear them." Gideon nodded. "I know." He reached for his rifle, an old Winchester that had seen better days, but it still shot straight and true. "Stay away from the window," he said. "Get behind the crates in the corner. If shooting starts, you keep your head down." May finished changing. The shirt hung down past her knees. The pants were rolled up at the cuffs. She looked ridiculous, but she also looked alive, and right now that was all that mattered. "Gideon," she said, "I need to tell you something." He glanced at her. "What?" Her voice was steady now, calm, like she had made peace with whatever was coming. "The man I saw at your ranch, the one giving orders. I remember his name now." Gideon felt his heart skip a beat. "Who was it?" May took a deep breath. "They called him Cole." The name hit Gideon like a sledgehammer. Cole Drayton, his foreman, his right-hand man, the man who had worked beside him for 20 years, who had eaten at his table, slept in his bunkhouse, shook his hand every morning like a friend. Cole. "That is not possible," Gideon said. His voice sounded hollow even to his own ears. May shook her head. "I know what I saw. I know what I heard. He was the one giving orders. He was the one who said you were in the way." Gideon stared at her. His mind was spinning, trying to make sense of something that made no sense at all. Cole had been with him since the beginning, since before the ranch was even built. They had driven cattle together, fought off bandits together, buried friends together. How could he be the one behind this? But even as Gideon asked himself that question, he knew the answer. Because Cole knew everything. Knew where Gideon rode every morning. Knew which trails he took. Knew where he would stop to water his horse. knew exactly where to set a trap. May was watching him, her eyes full of sympathy. "I am sorry," she said. "I know this is hard." Gideon shook his head slowly. Hard does not even begin to describe it. He turned back to the window. His jaw was set. His eyes were cold. Somewhere out there, Cole Drayton was coming. And when he got here, Gideon was going to look him in the eye, ask him why, and then do whatever needed to be done, even if it broke his heart. They waited in silence. The minutes stretched out like hours. The only sounds were the buzzing of flies and the distant call of a hawk circling overhead. Then footsteps, boot heels on hard-packed dirt, coming closer. Gideon raised his rifle, sighted down the barrel at the door. May pressed herself into the corner. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were fierce. The footsteps stopped right outside. Then a voice, calm and familiar. The voice of a man who thought he was in control. "Gid, come on out. No need for any of this." It was Cole. Gideon felt his finger tighten on the trigger. "No need for what, Cole?" he called back. "No need for you to explain why you left a woman tied up in the sun like an animal." A pause. Then a soft chuckle. She was listening where she should not have been listening. "You know how it is, Gid. Business is business." Gideon's blood ran cold. "What business, Cole? What exactly have you been doing behind my back?" Another pause. Longer this time. Then Cole spoke again, and his voice had changed. The friendly mask was slipping. Something darker was showing through. "This land, Gid, this ranch, it is worth a fortune. You have been sitting on a gold mine for 20 years, and you never even knew it." Gideon frowned. "What are you talking about?" "The railroad," Cole said. "They want to run a line right through here, and they are willing to pay big money for it, real money. The kind of money that can change a man's life." Gideon felt sick. "So you tried to steal my land, is that it? Tried to run me off so you could sell it out from under me?" Cole laughed, a cold, ugly sound. "Not steal, Gid. Just convince you to move along. But you are too stubborn, too set in your ways. You never did know when to quit." Gideon shook his head in disbelief. 20 years, Cole. 20 years I trusted you, and this is how you repay me." "Trust is for fools," Cole said, "and you always were too trusting for your own good." There was movement outside, more than one person. Gideon could hear other boots shifting on the dry ground. Cole had not come alone. "Come on out, Gid," Cole called. "Make this easy on yourself. You are outnumbered. You have got no way out. Just open that door, and we can talk this through like civilized men." Gideon looked at May. She was pale, scared, but there was fire in her eyes. "Do not do it," she whispered. "He will kill us both." Gideon knew she was right. Cole was not here to talk. He was here to finish what he started. But Gideon was not ready to die. Not yet. Not like this. He had built this ranch with his own 2 hands. He had bled for it, sweated for it, given up everything else in his life for it. He was not going to let Cole Drayton take it away. The standoff had begun. The line shack felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in. Gideon kept his rifle trained on the door while his mind raced through options. There were not many. Cole had men outside, at least 2 that Gideon could hear, maybe more. One rifle, one woman who could barely stand, and a whole lot of trouble. May moved closer to him. Her voice was barely a whisper. "What do we do?" Gideon shook his head. "We wait. Copper should be halfway home by now. When he shows up without me, my boys will know something is wrong." "How long?" Gideon calculated the distance in his head. 3 miles to the ranch, then time for someone to saddle up and ride out. An hour, maybe less if they push hard. May's face went pale. "An hour is a long time, I know." Cole's voice came through the door again. Patient, almost friendly, like they were just having a neighborly chat. "Gid, you are making this harder than it needs to be. All I want is for you to sign over the deed, nice and legal. Then you can ride off into the sunset, start fresh somewhere else." Gideon felt the anger burning in his chest. "And if I say no," Cole sighed heavily, "then we do this the hard way. And nobody wants that, especially not that pretty little thing you have got in there with you." May stiffened at that, her jaw clenched tight. Gideon felt something shift inside him. Something protective, fierce. "You touch her, and I will kill you, Cole. That is not a threat. That is a promise." There was silence outside. Then footsteps moving away from the door. Gideon let out a breath he did not know he was holding. He is backing off. For now, May said, but he is not leaving. He is just waiting. She was right. Cole was playing the long game. He knew Gideon could not stay in the shack forever. Sooner or later, they would have to come out, and Cole would be ready. Gideon lowered his rifle a fraction. His arms were already starting to ache from holding it up. "Tell me everything," he said. "Everything you heard at that depot." May nodded. She sat down on an overturned crate and wrapped her arms around herself. "I have worked at the Abene depot for about 6 months," she began. "Mostly just filing papers, keeping records, the kind of work nobody pays much attention to." Gideon nodded. "Keep going." "A few weeks ago, some men started coming in for meetings. Late at night after the regular workers went home. I stayed late one evening to finish some paperwork, and I heard them talking." "What were they saying?" May's eyes went distant, like she was reliving the memory. "They were talking about land. Specifically your land. They said the railroad surveyors had been through the area, said the best route for the new line ran right across your property." Gideon felt his stomach drop. He had heard rumors about the railroad expanding into the territory, but he never thought it would affect him. His land was good for cattle, not much else, or so he thought. "They said you would never sell willingly." May continued, "That you were too attached to this place, too stubborn to see reason." "That sounds about right," Gideon muttered. "So they came up with a plan. They were going to make your life so miserable that you would have no choice but to leave. Poison your wells, scatter your cattle, burn your barns, whatever it took." Gideon's hands tightened on his rifle, and Cole was part of this. May nodded slowly. He was more than part of it. He was running the whole thing. The other men answered to him. He was the one making the deals with the railroad people. Gideon closed his eyes for a moment. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. 20 years. He had trusted Cole for 20 years. And the whole time Cole had been waiting, watching, looking for the right moment to strike. How could I have been so blind? May reached out and touched his arm. Her fingers were gentle. "People like Cole are good at hiding what they really are. That is how they survive, by making everyone trust them." Gideon opened his eyes and looked at her. "How did they catch you?" May's face darkened. "I was stupid. I went back to the depot the next night to try and hear more. I thought maybe I could find some proof, something I could take to the marshal. But they were expecting me." May nodded. "Cole was there. He saw me hiding behind the door, and he smiled, like he knew all along, like I had walked right into his trap." "What did he do?" May swallowed hard. "He had his men grab me, tie me up. He said I needed to learn what happens to people who stick their noses where they do not belong." The way she said it made Gideon's blood boil. "Did they hurt you?" "Before I found you." May looked away. "Not the way you might think. They just made sure I knew how powerless I was, how small, how worthless." She paused. "That was the worst part. Not the ropes, not the sun. The way they looked at me. Like I was nothing." Gideon moved closer to her. His voice was soft. "You are not nothing, May. You are brave. You survived something most people could not survive. And you had the courage to tell me the truth even when it meant more danger." May looked up at him. There were tears in her eyes, but she was not crying. "Why does it matter to you? What happens to me?" Gideon considered the question. "Because somebody should care, and I happen to be standing here." It was the same answer he had given her before, but this time it meant something more. May held his gaze for a long moment. Something passed between them. An understanding. A connection. Then a shout from outside broke the spell. "Gid," Cole's voice again. "This is your last chance. Open that door or we are coming in." Gideon raised his rifle again. "Let him try." May stood up and moved to his side. "What can I do?" Gideon glanced around the shack. His eyes landed on an old hunting knife stuck in a wooden beam. "Take that knife. If anyone comes through that window, you use it." May nodded and pulled the knife free. Her hands were steady now. Whatever fear she had was locked away, buried deep. She was ready to fight. Gideon felt a swell of admiration for her. This woman had every reason to fall apart, to give up, to let the world crush her. But she refused, and that made all the difference. Outside, they could hear Cole giving orders. His men were spreading out, surrounding the shack. There were at least 3 of them, maybe 4. Gideon did the math in his head. 4 men against 1 rifle and a knife. Not great odds, but he had faced worse. Back in the winter of 1868, when the blizzard hit and half his herd froze to death, when he spent 3 days digging through snow just to find his barn, when everyone said he should give up and head back east. He did not give up then. He was not going to give up now. May spoke quietly. "Do you think your men will come?" Gideon nodded. "They will come. The question is whether they get here in time, and if they do not." Gideon looked at her. His eyes were calm, steady. "Then we go down fighting, and we take as many of them with us as we can." May almost smiled. "I never thought I would die in a line shack in Kansas." "We are not dead yet," Gideon said, "and I do not plan on dying today." There was movement at the window, a shadow passing across the glass. Gideon swung his rifle around and fired. The glass shattered. The shadow dropped away with a cry of pain. "One down," Cole's voice roared from outside. "You just made a big mistake, Gid." Gideon worked the lever on his rifle. Chambered another round. Maybe. But it felt pretty good. More shots came, punching through the thin wooden walls. Splinters flew. Dust exploded. Gideon pushed May down behind a stack of crates, threw himself on top of her, shielding her with his body. The gunfire went on for what seemed like forever, then stopped. Silence. Gideon lifted his head, looked around. The shack was full of holes. Light streamed through dozens of gaps in the walls, but somehow neither of them had been hit. Luck, or something more. May was breathing hard beneath him. Her eyes were wide. "Are you okay?" "I think so," she whispered. "And are you?" Gideon checked himself. "No blood, no pain. I am fine." He rolled off her and crouched behind the crates. His rifle was still in his hands. Cole's voice came again, angrier now. "That was just a warning, Gid. The next time we will not miss." Gideon did not answer. He was listening, trying to count the footsteps, trying to figure out how many men were left. 3, maybe 2. One was wounded, probably out of the fight. Still not great odds, but better. May tugged at his sleeve. "Listen." Gideon listened. At first he heard nothing, just the wind, the settling dust. Then, hoofbeats, distant but getting closer. A lot of them, moving fast. Gideon felt hope flare in his chest. "That is them. That is my boys." Cole heard it too. His voice went tight. "Finish this. Now." The hoofbeats grew louder, closer. Gideon counted at least 5 horses, maybe 6. His ranch hands, coming to find him. Cole cursed outside. His carefully laid plan was falling apart. "Spread out." He barked at his remaining men. "Do not let anyone get through." But it was too late. The riders came over the rise like an avenging storm. 6 men on horseback, armed and ready. Leading the charge was old Tom Briggs, 63 years old with a beard like a white waterfall. He had worked on the Mercer Ranch since before Gideon took it over, knew every inch of the land, knew every face that belonged there. And he knew that Cole Drayton had no business being here. Not like this, not with guns drawn. Tom's voice boomed across the prairie. "Cole Drayton, what in blazes do you think you are doing?" Cole froze. His men froze with him. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Cole did something Gideon did not expect. He smiled. That same friendly smile he had worn for 20 years. Like nothing was wrong, like this was all just a big misunderstanding. "Tom," he called out. "Good to see you. Listen, there has been some trouble. Gid is in that shack there. Something is wrong with him. He started shooting at us for no reason." Gideon felt his jaw clench, the nerve of the man, the absolute gall, trying to spin this around. Make Gideon look like the crazy one. But Tom Briggs was no fool. He had seen too much, lived too long. He could smell a lie like a bloodhound smells a trail. His eyes swept over the scene. The bullet holes in the shack. The wounded man lying in the grass. Cole and his remaining hired guns. He did not buy it for a second. "Gid," Tom called out. "You in there?" Gideon moved to the door, lifted the bar, pushed it open just a crack. "I am here, Tom, and I am not the one who started this." Tom nodded slowly. "Figured as much." Copper came running home alone, spooked as all get out. "We knew something was wrong." Cole's smile flickered. The mask was slipping again. "Tom, you do not understand. Gid has gone crazy. He has got some woman in there with him. He is not thinking straight. Tom ignored him. His eyes stayed locked on Gideon. Who is the woman, Gid? Gideon pushed the door open wider. May stepped out beside him, still wearing his oversized shirt, still pale but standing tall. Her name is May, Gideon said. Cole and his boys left her tied up by the river, used her as bait to draw me out. Then they tried to kill us both. The other ranch hands shifted in their saddles. Their faces went hard. In the West, there were some things you just did not do, and leaving a woman to die in the sun was at the top of that list. Tom's voice went cold. Is that true, Cole? Cole's smile was completely gone now, replaced by something desperate, something ugly. She is lying. They are both lying. I have been loyal to this ranch for 20 years. Tom shook his head slowly. Loyal men do not ride out with hired guns. Loyal men do not shoot up line shacks, and loyal men sure as hell do not hurt women. He drew his pistol. The click of the hammer pulling back was the loudest sound in the world. Get off your horse, Cole. Nice and slow. We are going to wait here for the marshal and let him sort this out. Cole's jaw tightened. His eyes darted from side to side, looking for a way out, but there was none. His men had already figured that out. They were dropping their guns, raising their hands. They were hired muscle, nothing more. They had no loyalty to Cole, no reason to die for him. Cole was alone, and he knew it. You do not understand, he said. His voice was rising, getting desperate. This land is worth a fortune. The railroad is coming. They are going to pay millions for the right of way. Millions. Tom did not move. That may be, but it is not your land to sell. Cole's hand moved toward his pistol. Everything happened at once. Tom shouted a warning. One of the ranch hands lunged from his horse. Gideon raised his rifle. But May was faster. She grabbed Gideon's arm and yanked him sideways. Just as Cole's pistol cleared leather, the bullet flew through the space where Gideon's head had been a heartbeat before. Tom fired back. The shot took Cole in the shoulder, spun him around, dropped him to the ground. Cole lay there in the dust, clutching his wound, staring up at the sky. It was over. The ranch hands moved in quickly, disarmed Cole and his remaining men, tied their hands behind their backs. Tom climbed down from his horse and walked over to Gideon. His weathered face was full of concern. You all right, boss? Gideon nodded. His heart was still pounding. His hands were still shaking. Thanks to May. She saved my life. Tom looked at May with new respect. Well then, he said, I reckon we owe you a debt of thanks, miss. May shook her head. I owed him first. He saved me when nobody else would have stopped. Tom grunted. Sounds about right. Gid always was too decent for his own good. Gideon ignored the joke. He was looking at Cole, the man who had been his friend, his partner, his brother in everything but blood. Now just a wounded betrayer lying in the dirt. Gideon walked over and stood above him. His shadow fell across Cole's face. Why? Gideon asked. Just tell me why. Cole looked up at him. There was no more pretense, no more friendly smiles, just bitterness, pure and raw. Because you had everything, he said. This land, these men, their respect. You never had to fight for any of it. You just inherited it from your daddy and sat back while the rest of us worked ourselves to death. Gideon felt like he had been punched in the gut. I worked this land every day of my life. Cole laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. You worked it, sure, but you never had to worry about losing it. Never had to wonder where your next meal was coming from. Never had to scheme and scrape and claw just to survive. He spat blood onto the ground. The railroad was my chance, my one chance to finally have something of my own. And you were just standing in the way. Same as always. Gideon stared at him for a long moment. 20 years, he said quietly. 20 years and I never knew you felt this way. Cole shrugged with his good shoulder. You never asked. Gideon turned away. He could not look at Cole anymore. Could not stand to see what his friend had become. Tom put a hand on his shoulder. Marshall is on his way, he said. Word travels fast when there is trouble. Gideon nodded. Good. Take Cole and his boys to the bunkhouse. Keep them under guard until the marshal gets here. Tom hesitated. What about you, boss? Gideon looked at May. She was standing apart from the others, arms wrapped around herself, watching him with those dark eyes. I am going to make sure she is okay, he said. She has been through enough for one day. Tom nodded and started barking orders. The ranch hands moved with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, Cole and his men were secured. The wounded man was patched up enough to survive the ride back. Gideon walked over to May. "How are you holding up?" May gave him a tired smile. "Better, thanks to you. You saved my life back there when you pulled me out of the way." May shrugged. "You saved mine first. Now we are even." Gideon almost smiled. "I reckon we are." They stood there for a moment. The sun was starting to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "What happens now?" May asked. "Now we go back to the ranch, get you some real food, some real clothes, a real bed, and then—" Gideon thought about it. "And then we figure out what comes next, together." May looked at him. "Together. If you want. You do not have anywhere else to be, right?" May shook her head. "Not anymore. Then stay. At least for a while. Until things settle down." May considered his offer. There was no reason to trust him. She had known him for less than a day, had seen him at his worst and his best, but she had also seen his heart, and that counted for something. "All right," she said, "I will stay." Gideon felt something loosen in his chest, something he had not even realized was tight. "Good." He helped her up onto one of the horses, then climbed up behind her. "Hold on," he said. "It is going to be a bumpy ride." May leaned back against his chest. "I think I can handle it." The Mercer ranch house sat on a small rise overlooking the valley, 2 stories of solid timber and stone, built to last through harsh winters and hot summers. Gideon had lived here his whole life. His father built the original cabin back in 1842. Gideon expanded it over the years, added rooms, added a proper kitchen, added a porch where he could sit and watch the sunset. Now as they rode up the dusty path, May looked at it with wide eyes. "This is your home." Gideon nodded. "Such as it is beautiful." He had never really thought about it that way. To him it was just where he lived, where he worked, where he slept at the end of each long day. But seeing it through May's eyes, he supposed it was pretty nice. The ranch hands had ridden ahead. By the time Gideon and May arrived, Cole and his men were already locked in the bunkhouse under guard. Martha Sims came running out to meet them. She was the cook and housekeeper, had been since Gideon's mother passed. A stout woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Lord have mercy," she said. "When I saw Copper come home alone, I thought the worst." "I am fine, Martha," Gideon said. "But this woman needs some looking after." Martha's eyes went to May, took in the oversized shirt, the bare feet, the bruises on her wrists. Her expression softened immediately. "Oh, you poor thing. Come with me. Let me get you cleaned up." She helped May down from the horse and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Led her toward the house. "There is fresh water heating," Martha said, "and I have got a spare dress that should fit you. Are you hungry? When did you last eat?" May looked back at Gideon. There was gratitude in her eyes, and something else, something warmer. "Thank you," she mouthed. Then Martha whisked her away. Gideon climbed down from the horse and handed the reins to a stable boy. His legs felt like they were made of water. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind nothing but exhaustion. Tom walked over. "Marshal Thompson just arrived. He is waiting in your office." Gideon nodded. "Best not keep him waiting then." Marshal Frank Thompson was a big man with a bigger mustache. He had been keeping the peace in this part of Kansas for 15 years. Knew every rancher, every outlaw, every grudge and feud that simmered beneath the surface. He stood when Gideon entered the office. "Gideon," he said, "Tom told me what happened. You want to give me your side?" Gideon sat down behind his desk, the same desk his father used to sit behind. He told the marshal everything. Finding May, the shots, the line shack, Cole's betrayal. Thompson listened without interrupting. When Gideon finished, he let out a long breath. "Cole Drayton," he said. "I never would have guessed." "Neither would I." Thompson pulled out a small notebook and pencil. "The woman, May. I will need to get her statement too. She has been through a lot today," Gideon said. "Can it wait until morning?" Thompson considered it. "I suppose so, but I will need to talk to her before I can officially charge Cole with anything." "You will get her statement. Just give her tonight to rest." Thompson nodded. "Fair enough." He stood to leave, then paused at the door. "You know Cole is going to claim he is innocent. that this was all some kind of misunderstanding. Let him. Gideon said. May saw everything. She heard him giving orders. And my men saw him shoot at me. Thompson sighed. Going to be your word against his in court. Railroad has deep pockets. They might hire some fancy lawyer to get him off. Gideon's jaw tightened. Then I will make sure everybody knows what he did. Every rancher in the county, every family in town. Cole Drayton was saying, will never work in this territory again. Thompson nodded slowly. That might be the best justice we can hope for. He put on his hat and walked out. Gideon sat alone in the quiet office. The last light of day was fading through the window. Shadows crept across the floor. He thought about Cole, about all the years they had spent side by side, all the memories that were now poisoned, the cattle drives, the long nights around the campfire, the time Cole pulled him out of a flooded river and saved his life. Had any of it been real? Or had Cole been scheming all along, waiting for his chance? Gideon did not know. And maybe that was the worst part. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Come in. Martha poked her head inside. That young lady is cleaned up and fed. I put her in the guest room upstairs. How is she? Shaken, but stronger than she looks. She asked to see you if you are not too tired. Gideon stood. I am never too tired for good company. Martha smiled. She seems like a nice girl. Decent folk. Yes, Gideon said. She does. He climbed the stairs to the second floor. His boots creaked on the wooden steps. A sound he had heard 1,000 times before. But tonight it felt different somehow. Fuller. The guest room door was slightly open. Warm lamplight spilled out into the hallway. Gideon knocked softly. May, it is Gideon. Can I come in, please? He pushed the door open. May was sitting in a chair by the window. She wore one of Martha's spare dresses, a simple blue cotton thing that fit her better than his old shirt had. Her hair was clean and brushed. Her face was scrubbed. The bruises on her wrists stood out darker now against her pale skin, but her eyes were clear, and when she looked at him, she smiled. You look different, she said. Gideon looked down at himself. He was still wearing the same dusty clothes from this morning. I do. Yes, you look tired, he laughed, a real laugh, the first one in what felt like forever. I suppose I am. Come sit, she said. Rest for a minute. He pulled up another chair and sat across from her on. The window looked out over the darkening prairie. Stars were starting to appear. Thank you for everything, May said, for saving me, for bringing me here, for making me feel safe. Gideon shook his head. You do not owe me thanks. Any decent person would have done the same. Would they, though? May asked. Most people would have ridden on by, pretended they did not see anything. It is easier that way. Maybe, Gideon said, but easy is not the same as right. May studied him for a long moment. You really believe that, do you? I do. Why? Gideon thought about it, about all the choices he had made in his life, all the times he could have taken the easy road, all the times he chose the hard one instead. Because my father taught me that a man is measured by what he does when no one is watching, by how he treats people who cannot do anything for him, by whether he stands up when it matters, even when it costs him everything. He looked at May. I found you lying in that grass, hurt, humiliated, alone, and I had a choice. I could pretend I did not see you, or I could stop and help. He shrugged. That is not really a choice at all, not if you want to be able to look at yourself in the mirror. May's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I wish more people thought like you. Gideon smiled softly. There are more of us than you think. We are just quieter than the bad ones. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars come out, listening to the night sounds of the prairie. May spoke first. What will happen to Cole? Gideon sighed. Marshall will take him to stand trial. Whether he gets convicted or not depends on the judge and jury, and if he goes free. Then I make sure everyone knows what he did. His reputation will be ruined. No one will hire him. No one will trust him. That seems like a light punishment for everything he did. Gideon nodded. Maybe. But sometimes that is how the world works. Justice is not always perfect. May looked down at her hands. I know. They fell silent again. The lamp flickered. A moth bumped against the window. Will you stay? Gideon asked suddenly. May looked up at him. What? Here. At the ranch, at least for a while, until you figure out where you want to go next. I do not want to impose. You would not be imposing. We have plenty of room, and Martha could use the help. May smiled. You want me to work for you only if you want to. No pressure. She thought about everything that had happened, about everything that might happen, about the man sitting across from her who had saved her life, who had treated her with kindness when he had every reason to keep writing. All right, she said, I will stay. Gideon felt his heart lift. Good, he said. That is good. He stood to leave, paused at the door. Get some sleep, May. Tomorrow is a new day. She smiled at him. Good night, Gideon. Good night. The trial of Cole Drayton lasted 3 days. It was held in the Abini courthouse, a wooden building with a leaky roof and creaky floorboards. But it was the closest thing to justice this part of Kansas had. Gideon testified on the first day, told the judge and jury everything. Cole's betrayal, the ambush, the shooting. May testified on the second day. She was nervous at first. Her voice trembled when she took the oath. Her hands shook when she sat in the witness chair. But as she told her story, she grew stronger, more confident. She looked Cole right in the eye when she described what he had done to her, how his men had grabbed her, tied her up, left her in the sun like garbage. Cole tried to stare her down, tried to intimidate her. It did not work. May refused to look away, refused to back down. And by the time she finished, every person in that courtroom knew the truth. Cole Drayton was guilty. The defense lawyer tried his best. He argued that Cole was a respected member of the community, that he had served the Mercer Ranch faithfully for 20 years, that there must be some misunderstanding. But the evidence was too strong, too clear. On the third day, the jury reached their verdict. Guilty. Cole was sentenced to 15 years in the territorial prison, plus restitution for damages to the Mercer Ranch. When the judge read the sentence, Cole's face went white. All his scheming, all his planning, all his dreams of railroad riches, gone in an instant. He was led out of the courtroom in chains, did not look at Gideon as he passed, did not look at anyone, just stared straight ahead, eyes empty, face blank. Gideon watched him go, felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Justice had been served, but it did not bring back 20 years of false friendship, did not erase the betrayal. Some wounds never fully heal. You just learn to live with the scars. May was waiting outside the courthouse, standing in a patch of sunlight, wearing a green dress that Martha had made for her. She looked beautiful. It is over, she said. He is going to prison. Gideon nodded, yes. How do you feel? He thought about it. I do not know, relieved, I guess, and sad and angry, all at the same time. May took his hand. That is normal. You lost someone you trusted. Even if he turned out to be a snake, it is still a loss. Gideon looked down at their joined hands. Her fingers were small and warm in his. Thank you, he said, for being here, for testifying. I know it was not easy. It was the right thing to do. He smiled at her. Funny, that is exactly what I said. May smiled back. Maybe we think alike. They stood there for a moment, in the sunshine, surrounded by townspeople and noise and the chaos of the courthouse steps. But for that one moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the world. Come on, Gideon said. Let me buy you lunch. I know a place. Is it better than the warm bath water you call coffee? Much better. They walked down the main street of Abini, side by side, like they had known each other for years instead of weeks. The town looked different now, smaller somehow, less threatening. The depot where May had worked was still there, still open for business. But she did not give it a second glance. That part of her life was over. The restaurant was called the Golden Spoon, a tiny place with checkered tablecloths and a menu chalked on a blackboard. Gideon ordered steak. May ordered chicken and dumplings. While they waited for their food, they talked, really talked, for the first time since everything happened. What are you going to do now? May asked. With the ranch, Gideon shrugged. Same thing I have always done. Raise cattle, fix fences, try to make it through another winter. What about the railroad? I sent them a letter and told them I was not interested in selling. Not now, not ever. And they accepted that. They did not have a choice. Without Cole feeding them information, they have no leverage. They will find another route. May nodded. Good. Their food arrived. They ate in comfortable silence, enjoying the simple pleasure of a hot meal and good company. Gideon watched May eat, the way she smiled at the first bite of chicken, the way she closed her eyes to savor the dumplings. She had been through so much, lost so much, but she was still here, still fighting, still finding joy in the small things. He admired that. "What about you?" he asked. "What do you want to do?" May set down her fork. "I have been thinking about that. A lot, actually." And she met his eyes. "I want to stay. At the ranch, not just as a guest or a worker, but as part of something, a community, a family." Gideon felt his heart speed up. "What are you saying?" May reached across the table and took his hand. "I am saying that you saved my life, Gideon Mercer. And somewhere along the way, you saved something else too. Something I thought I had lost forever." "What is that?" "Hope." She squeezed his fingers. "I want to build something with you. If you will have me." Gideon stared at her, this woman who had stumbled into his life just weeks ago, who had turned everything upside down, who had made him feel things he thought he would never feel again. "Are you sure?" he asked. "It is hard work out there. Long days, cold winters, nothing but cattle and prairie as far as the eye can see." May smiled. "I know, that is what I want." "Then yes," Gideon said. "I will have you, for as long as you want to stay, forever," she said. "Forever works." They sat there in the golden spoon, holding hands across the checkered tablecloth, while the lunch crowd bustled around them and the kitchen clattered with pots and pans. It was not romantic, not dramatic, not like the stories in the dime novels, but it was real. And sometimes real is better. They finished their meal, paid the bill, walked out into the afternoon sun. Gideon's horse was tied up at the hitching post, a big bay mare he had named Sunrise. "You ready to go home?" he asked. May looked at him. Her eyes were shining. "Yes," she said, "I am." They rode out of a bean together, leaving the town behind, heading west toward the open prairie. The sky was wide and blue. The grass was golden in the sunlight. A hawk circled overhead, calling out as if to welcome them. May leaned back against Gideon's chest, let out a contented sigh. "Tell me about the ranch," she said. "Everything. I want to know it all." So Gideon told her and her about the north pasture where the best grass grew, about the creek that ran through the property, about the old oak tree where his parents were buried. He told her about the cattle, the horses, the dogs that helped round up strays. He told her about the ranch hands, Tom Briggs and his terrible jokes, young Pete who could barely stay on a horse, old Miguel who knew more about cattle than anyone alive. He told her about the house, the kitchen where Martha cooked, the porch where he watched the sunset, the bedroom where he slept alone every night. Not anymore. May listened to every word, asked questions, laughed at the funny parts, grew quiet at the sad ones. By the time they reached the ranch, she felt like she already knew the place, like she had been living there for years. "Welcome home," Gideon said. May smiled. "Home," she repeated. "I like the sound of that." The weeks after the trial passed quickly. May settled into life at the Mercer Ranch like she had always belonged there. She helped Martha in the kitchen, learned to cook biscuits and stew, discovered she had a talent for making apple pie. She rode with Gideon sometimes, out to the far pastures, checking fences, counting cattle, learning the rhythms of ranch life. The land was vast and open, nothing like the cramped rooms and narrow streets she had known before. Here you could see for miles, could breathe air so clean it made your lungs ache. May fell in love with it and with Gideon. It happened slowly, in small moments, a shared laugh over breakfast, a quiet conversation on the porch, a look that lasted a beat too long. He was not a young man. His hair was more silver than brown now. His face was lined from years of sun and wind, but his eyes were kind, his hands were gentle, and his heart was bigger than the Kansas sky. May had known charming men before, men with easy smiles and empty promises, men who took what they wanted and left wreckage behind. Gideon was different. He never pushed, never demanded, never made her feel like she owed him anything. He just was, steady and true, like a rock in a river, something you could hold on to when the current got strong. One evening they sat together on the porch, watching the sun go down. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange. "Can I ask you something?" May said. Gideon nodded. "Anything. Why did you never marry?" Gideon was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "I came close once, a long time ago. Her name was Sarah. What happened? She got sick. Fever. The doctor did everything he could, but it was not enough." May reached over and took his hand. "I am sorry. It was a long time ago," Gideon said. "I thought I would never feel that way again. Never want to." He turned to look at her. "Then you came along." May felt her heart flutter. "Me, you, with your jokes and your courage and your stubborn refusal to give up." May smiled. "Stubborn, huh?" "Very stubborn, in a good way." They sat in silence for a while, holding hands, watching the stars come out. May spoke first. "I never told you about my past." Gideon shook his head. "You do not have to, but I want to. I want you to know who I am, where I came from. Then tell me." So she did. She told him about growing up poor, about her father who drank too much, about her mother who worked herself to death trying to keep the family together. She told him about leaving home at 16, about the jobs she had taken, waitress, seamstress, depot clerk, anything to survive. She told him about the men who had hurt her, used her, left her feeling worthless and small. And she told him about that day by the river, how she had thought she was going to die, how she had given up hope. "Then you came along," she said, "and everything changed." Gideon squeezed her hand. "I am glad I found you." "Me too." They sat there until the moon rose high. Then Gideon stood and offered her his arm. "Walk with me." They walked out into the pasture. The grass was silver in the moonlight. A coyote howled somewhere in the distance. Gideon stopped under the old oak tree, the one where his parents were buried. "This is where I want to spend the rest of my life," he said. "Right here on this land. Under this sky." He turned to face May. "And I want to spend it with you." May felt tears prick her eyes. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I love you, May. I know we have not known each other long. I know the world would say we are moving too fast, but I have learned that life is short, and when you find something good, you hold on to it with both hands." He took a deep breath. "Will you marry me?" May stared at him. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. This was not supposed to happen. Not to someone like her. Someone broken and used up. Someone who had given up on happy endings. But here it was, standing right in front of her, offering her everything she had ever wanted. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." Gideon's face split into a grin. He pulled her close and held her tight. They stood there under the oak tree, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had been broken and put themselves back together, who had chosen hope over despair, love over fear. The wedding was 2 weeks later. Nothing fancy, just a simple ceremony in the ranch house parlor. Tom Briggs stood up as best man. Martha cried into her handkerchief. The minister from town said the words. Gideon and May said their vows. For better or worse, richer or poorer, sickness and health, till death do us part. Then Gideon kissed his bride, and the ranch hands cheered, and Martha started serving cake. It was the happiest day of Gideon's life, and May's too. The first year of marriage was hard, not because they did not love each other, they did, more each day. But the land did not care about love. The land cared about rain and sun, and whether you had enough hands to bring in the herd before winter. The summer was dry. The creek ran low. The cattle grew thin. Gideon worked from before dawn until after dark, checking wells, hauling water, doing the work of 3 men because he could not afford to hire more. May worked beside him. She learned to rope and ride, learned to mend fences and doctor sick calves, learned to ignore the blisters on her hands and the ache in her back. Some nights they were too tired to even talk, just fell into bed and slept like the dead. But they made it through. When fall came and the rains finally returned, the grass grew green again. The cattle fattened up. The creek filled to the brim. They sold the herd for a good price, enough to pay off debts and put money in the bank, enough to hire new hands for next year, enough to breathe again. That winter, they sat by the fire in the big stone fireplace, listening to the wind howl outside. "We did it," May said. "We survived." Gideon nodded. We did. Together. She leaned against his shoulder. Do you ever regret it? Marrying me? Gideon laughed. Never. Not for a single second. Good. Because you are stuck with me now. I can think of worse fates. They were quiet for a while, watching the flames dance. Then May spoke again. Gideon. Yes, I have something to tell you. He looked at her. She was smiling. That secret smile she got when she was keeping something good. What is it? I'm going to have a baby. Gideon stared at her. For a moment he could not speak, could not think. A baby. Their baby. He felt tears prick his eyes, felt joy so big it could not fit inside his chest. Are you sure? The doctor confirmed it yesterday. I wanted to wait until tonight to tell you. Gideon pulled her close, held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Because she was. A baby, he whispered. We are going to be parents, yes. I do not know how to be a father. May laughed. You will learn. We will learn together. What if I mess it up? Then we will mess up together and figure it out, just like we always do. Gideon kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I love you, May. I love you too. The baby was born in spring, a little girl with her mother's dark hair and her father's blue eyes. They named her Sarah. After the woman Gideon had lost so many years ago, May held her in her arms and wept with joy. She is perfect. Gideon could only nod. Words were too small for what he felt. This tiny life, this miracle, born from love and hope in a chance meeting by a river. Everything that had happened, all the pain, all the fear, all the betrayal, it had led to this moment, and it was worth it, all of it. Years passed. Sarah grew from a baby to a toddler to a bright-eyed little girl who followed her father everywhere. She learned to ride before she could read, learned the names of every horse on the ranch before she knew her alphabet. May and Gideon had two more children, a boy named Thomas after Tom Briggs who had become like family, and another girl named Hope because that is what she represented. The ranch prospered. The railroad eventually came through, not across Mercerland but close enough to help. Now cattle could be shipped to market in days instead of weeks. Gideon hired more hands, built new barns, expanded the herd. He even built a proper schoolhouse for the ranch children. May taught reading and writing. Martha taught cooking and sewing. The Mercer Ranch became a community, a place where people looked out for each other, where no one was turned away hungry. Sometimes Gideon thought about Cole Drayton, wondered if he was still rotting in prison, wondered if he ever regretted what he had done. But those thoughts came less often as the years went by. There was too much living to do, too much joy to hold. One evening when the children were grown and the grandchildren were starting to arrive, Gideon and May sat on the porch together. Same porch they had sat on all those years ago, same view of the sunset painting the sky. But everything else was different. They were older now. Gideon's hair was pure white. May had wrinkles around her eyes. But when they looked at each other, they still saw the people they had been. Two strangers, thrown together by chance, who chose to build something beautiful out of the wreckage. Do you remember, May said, that day by the river? Gideon nodded. I remember everything. I was so scared. I thought my life was over. Instead, it was just beginning. May smiled. You saved me. Gideon shook his head. We saved each other. She took his hand. Her fingers were thin and weathered now, but still warm, still strong. If I could go back, she said, I would not change a thing, neither would I. They sat in silence, watching the sun sink below the horizon, listening to the laughter of grandchildren playing in the yard. This was what life was supposed to be. Not perfect, not easy, but full of love, full of purpose, full of second chances. Gideon had spent 48 years alone before he found May. He had thought that was his lot, that he would live and die on this ranch with nothing but cattle and memories. But fate had other plans. Sometimes the worst day of your life leads to the best. Sometimes the people who hurt you push you toward the people who will heal you. And sometimes a man just has to stop and help a stranger. Not because he expects anything in return, but because it is the right thing to do. That is the lesson Gideon would tell at his grandchildren, would tell anyone who asked. When you see someone hurting, stop and help. When you get knocked down, get back up. When you find love, hold on to it with both hands. And when the world gets dark, remember that the sun always rises. May leaned her head on his shoulder. Happy, she murmured. Gideon smiled. Very happy. And they were, for all the rest of their days.